first and foremost, I would like to welcome Dan Wilkins, who is here from CareSource to talk to us today about IT security, which is a huge field right now, and it continues to grow. And I'm sure Dan's going to talk to us about that and give us some thoughts on how you can get into the field and what kind of training and education you need to get there. So Dan, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let me share my screen. Let's see. Hopefully you all can see just as information security right now. So thank you for having me on. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm the director of cyber defense here at CareSource. I've been at CareSource for about 7 years. We're a not-for-profit healthcare organization based out of Dayton, Ohio. So we are Ohio-based. And really our mission is to make a lasting difference in our members' lives by improving their health and well-being. And so, you know, I do that at CareSource in cyber defense. I don't get to minister directly to them from like a healthcare provider. I'm not member facing in that way, but I do protect their information. Because that does have a life impact, right? If somebody steals your information through an information security incident, if we had a breach and somebody's identity was stolen, that does have a large impact. That adds a lot of stress and financial impact to somebody. So in a way, I am actually serving our members in that capacity as well. So I've been a really blessed to work at CareSource for the last 7 years and get to do a lot of really cool things. I have a couple of the certifications that I have up there, and security certifications can be a big deal because there's a practical aspect to getting them, and these are all through GIAC. I would say most students, I wouldn't expect to have a GIAC certification. Generally, you get those once you're at an organization that's willing to invest in you. They're pretty expensive, in my opinion. And so there's other certifications that are valuable for a student. Something like a Security Plus is a CompTIA certification. Those run, you know, a couple $100 instead of like $8,000 to $10,000. So that's a little more achievable for most students. But I've had experience in a lot of different ways. So some of these, so like the GCTI is certified in threat intelligence, and the IH and FA is incident response and forensic analyst. And then the GMON is just, I'm certified in monitoring security environments. Before I came to CareSource, I did consulting. So I did what's called penetration testing. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the careers in information security, kind of at the latter part of this. But penetration testing, essentially companies would hire me to break in. So that was a lot of fun to be on the attacking side of the world. I got to do a lot of things that would normally be illegal, but companies would hire us, and I would provide a report to them of this is how I was able to break into your company, and here's some of the ways you can fix these holes so that a real attacker would not be able to take the same advantage. One of the things I want to start with is hackers. So this is really misused in a lot of media by a lot of people, and they think of hackers as that top row, and it's not. That it's been turned into a word that means criminal, and that's not at all what it should mean. Hackers are the entrepreneurs, are the creative people, they're the inventors from 200 years ago, and so considering a hacker the same thing as a criminal is not okay. So I wanted to put at the bottom three. I have people that are hackers, some more modern day, and some not. So Grace Hopper, the central person, she actually invented the first computer compiler. She was also in Rear Admiral in the Navy and served for a very long time. But she invented the compiler. Her colleagues didn't believe her for way too long, an embarrassing amount of time. But she used to say that humans are allergic to change, and she fights that with everything she had in her. So she had a clock on her wall that ran counterclockwise just to make sure she didn't become complacent. Like, she was the ultimate hacker. Dave Kennedy, he's Ohio-based, actually started two companies, both near Cleveland, Trusted Sec. They're the offensive arm of his companies, and Binary Defense is the defensive arm of his companies. But he is who I would consider a hacker who does creative things, both for offense and defense. And then Malware Unicorn, she's a malware reverse engineer. She takes apart malware or essentially programs that attempt to do malicious items or malicious things on a computer, and she reverse engineers them. So figures out how they're written, how they work, and tries to learn who wrote them and how we can defend against them. She worked for an antivirus company for a while. I believe now she's at Facebook. But she is, again, a hacker. These are people that are creative, people that want to solve problems. That's what a hacker really is. The other people, those are criminals, and we need to call them that. We don't need to call hackers as bad people. Most of my job is really trying to figure out which provokes more fear in people, right? The shark or the vending machine. And you would say, well, most people would be afraid of the shark, but the reality of it is, and this is your encouragement for Tuesday, you're more likely to die to a vending machine. And this is what I spend a lot of time too, not actually talking about vending machines and sharks, but there's a lot of this idea of, okay, this is what I need to be fearful of from a security perspective. People think, oh, I know about security because I know about the Nigerian prince. That's generally not what you need to be worried about. It's the email that looks really good. It's the one that looks like it was sent by the organization that knows who you are and that creates panic in you. That's the vending machine, the one you're more comfortable with, not the shark. And so a lot of my day is trying to kind of level set where our risk actually is. And it's generally not the shark. Very few times is the shark really what we need to be worried about. Because a lot of it's misperceptions, right? We think it's this hacker that's a criminal in reality that's based out of Russia or somewhere else that's wearing a ski mask while they type. And oftentimes it's not that person. And so what's a career in InfoSec look like? There's a lot of collaboration. So we very rarely have the rights on a computer system to do what we completely need to do. We're reliant on others. We work with others a lot. So depending on what level in information security you're in, it depends on how many meetings you go to versus how much time is like hands-on keyboard. So I'm at this point a director in cyber defense, and so I have oversight of two different teams. One is the Cyber Fusion Center. They're the ones that kind of hunt around for threats, and they respond to incidents. So something bad has happened. What do we do to stop it from getting worse? And then the threat intelligence side is a lot of fun as well. And that's really the side that's saying, okay, who are the groups that want to attack healthcare? Who are the people that think that our data is valuable? What do they normally do, and how do we defend against it? So that's a lot of research. It's a lot of learning. In some ways, it's a lot of understanding how people tick. And so that's one side. The other side is our cybersecurity engineers and architects. So they're the ones that make sure the tools are up and running. My architects especially, they're working with other people in the business and in IT to design secure solutions. And that can be done in a lot of different ways. But I like to think of security as the brakes on the car. You don't have brakes to go slower, you have brakes to go faster, right? If you didn't have brakes, the top speed you should ever hit is like 5 miles an hour, because that's a low enough speed, like you're pretty much playing bumper cars. You put brakes on a car so you can speed up and slow down only when necessary. Right, and so that's how information security should be viewed in my point, or in my perspective, is that we're there to allow the business to go faster, but to pump the brakes when we really need to avoid an accident. So that's part of a career in information security, is collaboration, being in meetings, finding kind of solutions to problems with other people in IT or in the business. And then the other part is banging your head against the keyboard because your code won't run, or because you can't figure out how an attacker got in, but you need to figure that out to make sure that you actually got them out. And so some of it is more self-reliant. You need to be a learner, somebody that appreciates finding out new things, because information security changes constantly. It's not a static field of study at all. The attacks from 5 years ago look very different. The attacks from a year ago even look very different. Because as the attackers get better, the defense learns how to defend against that, and the attacker has to now learn a new path. So whether you're on the offensive side or the defensive side, it's constant learning. So if you're somebody that wants to learn one thing and get really good at that one thing, information security may not be, at least all parts of information security may not be the right one, because it's like a giant cat and mouse game, just with a lot higher stakes. There's some areas of InfoSec that are a little more static, but not many. So what do you need to be in information security? What do you need to be good at it? So I have a couple of pictures that the students might not understand, because some of the TV show characters are a little older, but they're valid nonetheless. So curious, George. So to be in information security, you need to be curious. Why do things work this way? As an attacker, okay, what would happen if I did X, right? So that curiosity, it doesn't just kill the cat, right? It's actually what makes us good at our jobs. We want to understand, okay, why does this work this way? Or why would people fall for a phishing attack? What is the common behavior that makes people vulnerable to a phishing attack? The next one over is MacGyver. You need to be creative. Very rarely in my career in InfoSec have I had all the tools or all the knowledge ahead of time to detect an attack or to succeed in an attack. I had to come up with a solution on the fly that was relatively creative. So I'll give you one instance. We had an attacker that we didn't know who they were, but they were attacking us over LinkedIn. They weren't using a traditional like email phishing. Everything was being done through LinkedIn messaging. Well, LinkedIn messaging means I don't have full visibility into what was being sent and who all was being attacked. If it was an email, I could just go under our email servers and I could easily see, okay, this list of 500 employees received the attack and be able to reach out to them and just let them know, hey, this is an attack. But because it was LinkedIn, I couldn't do that. So the solution we came up to was whenever somebody received an attack that did report it to us, we found one of them that hadn't said anything back to the attacker at all. They had just, as soon as they saw the message, they reached out to me and said, hey, I just got this. It looks weird. I said, have you responded? They said, no. I said, perfect. So we actually submitted fake credentials across their phishing. We act like we fell for their phishing attack, and then watched our systems to look to see if anybody attempted to use those fake credentials. Well, sure enough, about 30 minutes later, somebody attempted to use those fake credentials that we submitted. And we were able to narrow down, it was an attacker in Arizona that was coming after us. We were able to find, okay, there had been 3 other people, actual employees that had submitted their credentials, and we were able to respond sooner than the attacker could use their credentials. So it wasn't something that I had all the information, but we were able to find a creative solution to figure it out. And then the A team at the bottom, this is just, I think, good in general for people to know, is find the role that you want to serve. And there are all kinds of needs in information security. And the reason I say the A team, so there were 4 people. Faceman, the person on the left, he was the person that got all the attention. He was the one that would speak in front of people. Figure out if you want to be that person. Do you want to get the credit? Do you want to be face to face with people? Social engineering is one of those sides of information security that is more visible, and it's something that you would be in front of people more. Then you have the pilot in the back. That's Murdoch. He was the crazy one. He would come up with just off the wall solutions to things that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. But he came up with just the wild solutions. So I like to play that kind of role of, hey, what if we did this and just see if it works? B.A. Baracus on the right, Mr. T, he was the muscle. He was the one that went in and banged heads together. That is needed in security. Generally, that's in the vulnerability management side. And then the bottom, the General Hannibal, he was the one that sat in the background and pulled the strings. He figured out things to do, but was very rarely in the spotlight. And the problem in careers is if you think you're Murdoch, but your company thinks you're Hannibal, they're going to take everything you say and they're going to implement it, because Hannibal, that's what you do. He's the leader. He's the one that says what you do. And so if you're Murdoch and you think you're just coming up with off the wall ideas, but your company starts implementing everything, that's not going to work well. Or if you want to be face, you want to be kind of the person that gets to smooth people or trick people or whatever, but your company thinks you're B.A. Baracus and you're supposed to be there banging heads. Well, that's going to cause issues as well. So figuring out what kind of role you want to fill in your career is important. So some various red team careers, and in information security, red team means attacker. So these are careers as an attacker. Now, I'm only going to talk about the ethical ones, right? Obviously, there are criminals. Don't do that. That's bad. But the red team careers are, in my opinion, a lot of fun. They really generally are going to be as a consultant. So very few companies are large enough. And I shouldn't say very few. There's enough, but there are not a lot of companies that have a full red team on hire. Generally, you contract this out to a third party. So a lot of these, like a penetration tester or a physical tester, those are most likely going to be in a consultant capacity. That's how I did it when I was a penetration tester, as I was a consultant. It was a lot of fun. You get to work with a lot of cool companies and travel to a lot of cool places, all paid for, which is a lot of fun. The downside is, your schedule's not necessarily set by yourself. It's set by the companies that are hiring you, right? So there's a downside there, but it can be a lot of fun. A penetration tester, this can come from many different skill sets. So I went to college for computer science. I've never used programming in my career at all. I found I just wasn't as good as the other people in my class in college at programming. I was better at the security side of things. But penetration testers, you can be a programmer, you can be a network engineer, you can know Microsoft really well. Mine, I have a networking background, a Microsoft background, and then social engineering was what I really enjoyed doing. I really, and this sounds terrible, I really enjoyed tricking people. It was a lot of fun. I enjoy the psychology aspect of why do people behave the way they do, and how can I take advantage of that in some ways. Obviously with the intention of making things better, but that was where I really like to be. Vulnerability researcher, this is generally going to be based off of programming. So it's somebody that's really good at programming and understands the code. They're generally looking for vulnerabilities in software, which is a lot of testing of software to see if you can get it to break in new and interesting ways. Physical tester, that one, if you like adrenaline rushes, that was always a huge adrenaline rush, because if you're physically caught, generally the police are going to be involved, because you're trying to actually like physically break in, right? When I was doing digital penetration testing, even when I got caught, it's not like anybody was going to show up and arrest me. But when I got to do the physical testing, like you're on premise, like there's you have a get out of jail free card generally from their legal department. At least I always did. So if the police did get called, you could prove, okay, hey, I'm supposed to be here. I got hired. I'm not actually trying to break in. But that one's an adrenaline rush, but that one's also a lot harder as well. There's a lot bigger implications if you get caught. I could go into that more, but I want to highlight the blue teams. There's, I think, more careers in blue team. If you think about like the President Biden has his executive order on cybersecurity, and it's not completely finalized yet. I mean, the executive order is out, but all the details aren't there yet of what it's going to look like. But cybersecurity is not something that's going away. That's why a career in it is so great. Right? The internet is not great. It is not secure, and yet we rely on it more and more every year as we go. And so there's just tremendous amount of job security. There is a great need for more and more cybersecurity specialists, especially on the blue team side. And that can go in military, uses cybersecurity a lot. You don't even have to go to college. I have people on my team that didn't come onto the team with a degree. They've ended up going and getting an associate's or college degree that, and actually CareSource will do tuition reimbursement, so they didn't even end up paying for it themselves. But a college degree is not required to get into cybersecurity. It can help, certainly for like getting your resume into the right person's hands. Certifications are not required, but same thing, it can help. At least for me personally, certifications speak more than the college degree, depending on what it is that I'm looking to hire, because certification may be a more practical. So like for all of the ones that I had, it wasn't just like a written test. I actually had to get in a lab and demonstrate practical knowledge of how to do something, like hands on keyboard doing it, not just a multiple choice test. And so certifications can be really valuable in security. Blue team careers can come from all over the map, and I have some of them. I'm not going to speak to each one. And for the teachers in the room, if you're trying to figure out, okay, which students would I say, like, hey, you might want to consider getting into cybersecurity. I'll go back to red team. For the red team side of the house, if you have students that enjoy pranking you, like these might be the students that are not the most fun to have in class. Red team careers may be like that's where I first got into it, was playing pranks on my high school teachers. So as much as maybe like they can be hard, like the people that are just creative in the way that they pull pranks or do stuff like that, like they may be a good fit for red team careers. The blue team ones are the ones that like they have to solve the puzzle. Like if you give them a test, they won't just accept like, okay, well, why was I wrong on this? No, like I have to understand every piece of like, where did I go wrong? Like if they're doing a math problem, they're showing their proof. That a lot of times is the blue team side. They love solving puzzles. They don't like the unknown. They need to solve it. They need to do some kind of data analytics and figure out what actually happened. Those can be really, really good blue teamers, because like security analysts and forensic analysts, incident responder, those are people, everything bad has now happened. We need to figure out how the attacker got in. We need to figure out where all they went. So solving that puzzle, following breadcrumbs, and we need to make sure we get them out and keep them out. So that's kind of all of those roles all rolled together. It's a lot of fun as well, and you can do that as a consultant, or you can do that, and most companies will have some form of blue teamer, and generally it's going to be like a security analyst that also does incident response or forensics. Forensics especially can get really specialized because law enforcement uses them, and that's how you go to court. And so forensics can be good there. Auditing, risk and compliance, threat intelligence, secure development. Those are just showing like you can be a coder, threat intelligence. You could be a foreign studies type of person. I knew somebody that they were really interested in Russia. That's what they went to college for, is Russian language and Russian lit. And then they got into threat intelligence because Russian attackers were coming after this pharmaceutical company. And so they were like, well, we need somebody that understands the Russian mind and how they work. And this person was like, well, that's what I went to school for. They hired her on, and she was phenomenal at it because she understood, okay, like this is what they're saying in the threat, in the forums talking about our company. Like, this is what we need to do. This is how they're thinking about us. So she was able to take like her knowledge of Russia and translate it into technical information. And not all the roles require technical. So like social engineering just requires understanding how people work and how people tick. And so you don't have to be like an urban nerd to be able to do information security. Like I said, this person, she studied Russian lit. She ended up learning the technical side really well, but people can come from all backgrounds, all walks, all different skill sets, and be really good in security. I could talk for way more than 30 minutes that I have, but I do realize I only have 4 minutes, and I don't want to go into the next person's time slot. So I see a couple of chats. I don't know if Patty, are there any questions for me that I can go over in the next couple of minutes?
Thank you so much for all this information. It's very informative. I really enjoyed learning a little bit more about red and blue teams and different type of hacking. It's I learned a lot there. And So there is no specific questions in the chat.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
going through them, but we do have some other questions that I was asked offline.
Sure.
And one of the questions is, what is the best way to get experience?
Yeah. So Cyber Patriot program is extremely valuable for information security experience. If you have that in your area, I would highly suggest doing that. It gives you very practical experience. You learn how the attacking side works and the defending side works. If you don't have it in your area, I know there's more and more coming online. But Cyber Patriot's one of the best. But there's also, there's free capture the flag events available online. One of them's called the Holiday Hack Challenge. Sands runs it. That's free. It happens every year around November, December timeframe. It's kind of a gamified capture the flag event. And same thing, they'll walk you through the offensive and defensive side. It's a lot of fun. Generally, they'll also put up old ones. So I think now's the 8th or 9th year. They'll put the older ones up available year round. And that can be a really good way of getting some practical experience as well. If you don't have something like Cyber Patriot program. There's also a lot of great resources on YouTube for information security. Things like DerbyCon was a great conference based out of Louisville. There's a couple of good conferences in Ohio as well. If you're in the Dayton area, Ohio Information Security Conference that Technology First puts on is always great. And I think they almost always have either free or reduced price tickets for students. And I would recommend that. And if any of you do attend, I'm almost always there, sometimes speaking, but even if I'm not speaking, I should be there, and feel free to come up and introduce yourself. It'd be great to meet you.
Great, thank you. We have another question about the great skill of hackers have. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, so one of the ways they use to, similar to red blue, but this is more in the terms of ethics. Black hat hacker would be a criminal. White hat hacker would be kind of what I've filled as far as doing it for defensive purposes for the right reasons, very ethical. There's all kinds of colors of gray when you get there, because some people will say, like, if you find a vulnerability, are you now a black hat because you found a vulnerability? But if you sell it to somebody, there's all kinds of ethical dilemmas with information security. I would ride more in the light gray to white side of the house, but yeah, I mean, certainly, black hat, you're breaking the law, and not doing it for the right reasons. So I would not ever advise anybody to go down that path.
Thank you. And one final question. I know you mentioned you had a lot of certifications. As students are starting out in this career field, what in your opinion is the most critical certification that they should try to get first? Yeah,
for security specifically, I'm going to cheat and say 2 or 3. So they're all by CompTIA, but A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, they all build on each other. And you could go with Security Plus if you wanted to purely be security, but I think you would miss some of the foundational aspects that the Net Plus and the A+ give you. As far as how the underlying technology works, generally you need some understanding of that technology, not all the time, but some understanding of the underlying technology to be better at security. So if you only had the budget for one, I would say Security Plus from CompTIA. But if you could, I would try and do the A+ and Network Plus also. Outside of that, any of the GAC certifications are great. I'm not a huge fan of the CISSP for entry-level people. It's not meant for that. It's meant for management and leadership. I'm not a fan of the Certified Ethical Hacker, the CEH. There's just a lot of times their training material is a little outdated, and it doesn't teach the underlying kind of foundational aspects that you get from Security Plus or Network Plus.
Great advice. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Well, with that, we'll let you go ahead and enjoy the rest of your day. We appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge with us.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dan. Appreciate it.